The alarm bells rang through the research ship Starbound as Captain Vexthari studied the data on her screen. Her four eyes moved quickly across the numbers, checking them again and again. She could not believe what she was seeing. "Commander, Raxthul, come to the bridge now," she called through the ship's communication system. Her voice carried the authority that came from leading expeditions across the galaxy for over 30 years. Dr. Jake Morrison was in the ship's small library when he heard the alarm. He looked up from his research tablet where he had been studying ancient star charts. The other crew members often forgot he was there, which suited him fine. Being the only human on a ship full of aliens was never easy. Jake had joined this expedition 6 months ago as part of a cultural exchange program between Earth and the Galactic Archaeological Consortium. Most of the crew thought humans were too primitive to contribute anything useful to their work. They treated him like a curious pet rather than a fellow scientist. He walked to the bridge, his footsteps quiet on the metal floor. The other crew members were already gathering around Captain Vexthari. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and those four eyes that could see things humans could not. Her species, the Valdari, were known throughout the galaxy as excellent explorers. "What have you found, Captain?" asked Dr. Zethkura, the expedition's lead archaeologist. She was a Cytherian, a species that looked like tall, thin lizards with oversized heads full of brains. The Cytherians believed they were the smartest species in the galaxy, and they never let anyone forget it. Captain Vexthari pointed to the main screen. It showed a star map with a bright red dot blinking in empty space. "Our deep space probe found something in the void sector. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database." The crew fell silent. Everyone knew about the void sector. It was a region of space that most civilizations avoided. Ships that went there often disappeared, and those that returned brought stories of strange encounters and equipment failures. The galactic governments had declared it off-limits except for special research missions. "What kind of energy readings?" Commander Raxthul asked. He was a Thoraxian, a species that looked like giant insects with 4 arms. They were known as the best military minds in the galaxy. "The probe detected a massive artificial structure," Captain Vexthari said. "From the size estimates, it appears to be a ship. A very large ship." She pressed a button and new data appeared on the screen. Jake stepped closer to get a better look. The numbers made him catch his breath. If the readings were correct, this ship was bigger than any space station he had ever heard of. "How large exactly?" Dr. Zethkura asked, her scaled face showing doubt. "Over 50 kilometers long," Captain Vexthari replied. "The probe scan suggests it has been drifting in space for a very long time, possibly millions of years." The crew exchanged glances. Even the oldest known civilizations had only existed for a few 100,000 years. A ship that old would predate everything they knew about galactic history. "Could the probe be malfunctioning?" asked Dr. Lisa Park, the only other human on. The ship, she worked as an engineer and had become Jake's closest friend during the voyage. Like Jake, she often felt ignored by the alien crew members. "I ran the diagnostics 3 times, Captain Vexthari said. "The probe is working perfectly. The readings are real." Jake studied the data on the screen. Something about the ship's shape seemed familiar, though he could not figure out why. It was long and sleek, with curves that reminded him of something from Earth's ancient past. "We must investigate," Dr. Zethkura said, her voice filled with excitement. "This could be the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. Think of what we might learn about the early civilizations." Commander Raxthul looked less enthusiastic. "The void sector is dangerous. There is a reason most ships avoid it. We should report this discovery to the Galactic Council and let them decide what to do. By the time they assemble a proper expedition, another research team might find it. First," Dr. Zethkura argued, "we are already here. We have the equipment and the expertise. This is exactly the kind of discovery our mission was designed for." Captain Vexthari considered both arguments. Jake watched her 4 eyes as she weighed the options. He knew she was thinking about her reputation as much as the scientific value of the discovery. A find this significant would make her famous. Throughout the galaxy, we will investigate, she decided. But we will take precautions. Full sensor sweeps before we get close, emergency protocols ready at all times. The crew began preparing for the journey to the void sector. Jake returned to his quarters to pack his research equipment. As the ship's only xenorchaeologist, he would be expected to help analyze any artifacts they found, though he doubted the alien crew members would listen to his opinions. 3 days. Later, the Starbound dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the void sector. Jake stood on the observation deck with the other crew members. Looking out at the strange region of space ahead of them, the void sector looked different from normal space. The stars seemed dimmer, and there was an odd haze that made everything look slightly blurred. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he stared into the darkness. "Sensors are picking up the target," announced Dr. Myra Oxton, the ship's science officer. She was human-like, but with silver skin and no hair. Her species, the Xenari, were known for their advanced technology. "Put it on the main screen," Captain Vextari ordered. The screen flickered, and then Jake saw it. The ancient ship hung in space like a sleeping giant. It was beautiful in a way that took his breath away. The hull was smooth and dark, reflecting the distant starlight like polished metal. Strange symbols covered its surface, though they were too far away to make out clearly. "Magnificent," Dr. Zethkara whispered. "Look at the construction, the materials. I have never seen anything like it." Jake had to agree. The ship looked nothing like the vessels built by any known civilization. It was too organic, too flowing. It looked almost alive. "Running detailed scans now," Dr. Oxton reported. "The hull appears to be made of some kind of composite material. The energy signature is very faint, but there are signs of power still running through some systems." "After millions of years?" Commander Raxthul asked in disbelief. "The readings are clear," Dr. Oxton said. This ship is not completely dead, Jake felt his heart racing. A ship that old with power still running meant its builders had technology, far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. He started to speak up, then stopped himself. The alien crew members would just ignore him anyway. Captain Vextari ordered the ship to move closer. As they approached the ancient vessel, its true size became overwhelming. The Starbound was a large research ship, but next to this ancient giant, it looked like a small boat next to an aircraft carrier. "Beginning close-range scans," Dr. Oxton announced. "I am detecting multiple hull breaches, but the main structure appears intact. There are what look like docking ports along the lower hull." "Any signs of life?" Captain Vextari asked. "Negative, but the ship's power systems are definitely active in some sections." Jake pressed closer to the observation window. As they moved around the ship, he could see more details of its construction. The symbols on the hull were not random decorations. They formed patterns that seemed almost mathematical, like equations written in unknown language. "Prepare a boarding party," Captain Vextari ordered. Dr. Zethkura, Commander Raxthul, and Dr. Oxton will lead the initial exploration, full environmental suits and emergency equipment. Jake watched as the crew prepared for their historic mission. He wanted desperately to be part of the boarding party, but he knew better than to ask. In their eyes, he was just a primitive human who might get in the way. As the boarding shuttle prepared to launch, Jake remained on the observation deck, staring at the ancient ship. Something deep inside him stirred as he looked at it, a feeling he could not explain. It was as if the ship was calling to him, waiting for something only he could provide. The boarding shuttle moved slowly toward the ancient vessel. Jake watched from the Starbound's bridge as Commander Raxthul piloted the small craft with 3 other crew members aboard. Dr. Zethkara sat in the passenger seat, her equipment ready to scan anything they might find. "Shuttle approaching the main docking port," Commander Raxthul reported over the radio. His voice sounded calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. Captain Vextari stood behind the communications console. All 4 of her eyes focused on the main screen. "Proceed carefully, Commander. We still do not know what we are dealing with." Jake moved to stand beside Dr. Lisa Park at the sensor station. She was monitoring the shuttle's approach with worried eyes. As the only other human on the ship, Lisa understood how Jake felt about being left out of the mission. "The shuttle is 50 meters from the docking port," Dr. Mara Oxton announced from her science station. All systems showing normal, then something changed. The ancient ship began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. It started from the nose and spread backward along the hull like water flowing over metal. "What is happening?" Captain Vextari demanded. "Unknown." "Energy buildup detected," Dr. Oxton said, her silver fingers flying over her controls. "The ship appears to be responding to our approach." Commander Raxula's voice came through the radio, tight with concern. "My instruments are going crazy. The navigation system just shut down." "Return to the Starbound immediately," Captain Vextari ordered. "I am trying, but the engines are not responding," Commander Raxula replied. "Something is interfering with our power systems." Jake watched in horror as the shuttle began to drift away from its intended course. The small craft spun slowly, completely out of control. Through the radio, he could hear the crew members trying to restart their systems. "Emergency power is failing," Dr. Zethkora reported from the shuttle. "Life support is switching to backup systems." The ancient ship's glow grew brighter. Jake could see energy patterns moving across its hull like living lightning. The patterns seemed to focus on the area around the docking port where the shuttle had been trying to land. "Launching rescue pods," Captain Vextari announced. "All crew members prepare for emergency evacuation procedures." 3 small rescue pods shot out from the Starbound toward the disabled shuttle. Jake held his breath as he watched them approach. The pods reached the shuttle just as its life support systems began to fail completely, one by one. The crew members transferred from the shuttle to the rescue pods. Commander Raxthul was the last to leave, staying behind to try to restart the engines until the final moment. "All crew members secured," the rescue pod pilot reported. "Returning to the Starbound now." As soon as the rescue pods moved away from the ancient ship, the strange glow began to fade. The energy patterns on the hull slowed and then disappeared completely. Within minutes, the ship looked exactly as it had before, dark and silent. The rescue pods docked with the Starbound, and the crew members were brought to the medical bay. Dr. Chun Wolf, the ship's doctor, examined each of them carefully. Commander Raxthul had suffered burns on his hands from trying to restart the shuttle's engines. Dr. Zethkara was shaken, but unharmed. "The ship definitely has active defense systems," Commander Raxthul reported to Captain Vextari after his medical treatment. "As soon as we got close, it started jamming our electronics." "Did you see anything else?" Captain Vextari asked. "The docking port began to open," Dr. Zethkara said. "For a moment, I thought we were going to make it inside. Then everything went wrong." Dr. Oxton had been analyzing the sensor data from the failed boarding attempt. "The energy patterns were very specific," she reported. "It was not random interference. The ship was actively targeting our systems." Jake listened to the discussion from the back of the room. He wanted to ask questions, but he knew the alien crew members would not welcome his input. Still, something about the energy patterns bothered him. From what he had seen on the bridge monitors, they had looked almost purposeful, like the ship was trying to communicate rather than attack. "We need to try a different approach," Dr. Zethkara said. "Perhaps we can modify our equipment to resist the interference." "Or we could try using different technology," suggested Dr. Oxton. "The ship might not recognize our backup systems." Captain Vextari considered both options. "Prepare another shuttle. This time we will use the older navigation systems and basic power cells. If the ship is targeting our advanced technology, maybe simpler equipment will work." It took 6 hours to prepare the second attempt. Jake spent the time studying the sensor readings from the first boarding attempt. He borrowed Lisa's engineering tablet and ran his own analysis of the energy patterns. What he found made him even more curious. The patterns were not random electromagnetic pulses. They followed mathematical sequences that reminded him of something he had studied back on Earth. prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and other mathematical concepts that any intelligent species should recognize. "Lisa," he said quietly, "look at this data. Does it remind you of anything?" Lisa studied the tablet screen. Her eyes grew wide as she saw what Jake had discovered. "These are not random patterns. They look like mathematical communications." "That is what I thought too," Jake said. "What if the ship was not trying to attack the shuttle? What if it was trying to talk to us?" Before Lisa could respond, the alarm bells rang again. The second boarding attempt was about to begin. This time, Commander Rackstool stayed on the Starbound. Dr. Alex Turner, another Thoraxian officer, piloted the shuttle with a different crew. They had stripped out most of the advanced electronics and replaced them with simpler backup systems. "Approaching the docking port now," Dr. Turner reported. "All systems functioning normally." Jake watched the main screen as the shuttle moved toward the ancient ship. For a few minutes everything seemed to be going well. The shuttle maintained course and speed without any problems. Then the ancient ship began to glow again. "Here we go," Captain Vextari muttered. This time, the energy patterns were different. Instead of the flowing lightning Jake had seen before, the hull showed geometric shapes that pulsed in regular rhythms. Circles, triangles, and more complex patterns appeared and disappeared across the metal surface. "Shuttle systems are failing," Dr. Turner reported. "But it is happening more slowly this time. Can you reach the docking port?" Captain Vextari asked. "Negative. The navigation system is shutting down now." Jake watched the geometric patterns on the ship's hull. They were definitely mathematical. He could recognize basic shapes and sequences that any scientist should understand. The ship was trying to communicate, he was sure of it. "Captain," he said, stepping forward, "I think the ship is trying to send us a message." Captain Vextari turned all four eyes toward him. "What do you mean, human?" "The energy patterns are not random. They follow mathematical principles. Look at the shapes on the hull. Those are geometric proofs and number sequences." Dr. Zethkara looked at Jake with surprise. "You think the ship is attempting communication?" "Yes," Jake said. "And I think it is rejecting the boarding attempts because it does not recognize the crew members as the right species." "That is ridiculous," Dr. Zethkara said. "Defense systems do not work that way." But Captain Vextari was studying the patterns on the main screen. Dr. Morrison might be correct. The ship's responses are too organized to be simple defensive reactions. The second shuttle had to be rescued just like the first. As soon as the crew was evacuated, the ancient ship returned to its dark, silent state. Dr. Chun Wolf treated 2 more crew members for energy burns. The ship's defensive systems were becoming more dangerous with each attempt. "We cannot keep risking crew members like this," Captain Vextari said during the emergency meeting. "But we cannot abandon the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history either." "Maybe we should contact the Galactic Council," Commander Rackstool suggested. "They have resources we do not." "That could take months," Dr. Zethkara protested. "By then, someone else might claim the discovery." Jake had been thinking about the problem all day. The mathematical patterns, the selective interference, the way the docking port had started to open before the systems failed. Everything pointed to one conclusion. "What if the ship only accepts certain species?" he asked. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. "Explain," Captain Vextari said. "The ship is millions of years old," Jake said. "What if its builders programmed it to only respond to their own kind?" "That would explain why it keeps rejecting our boarding attempts. It does not recognize any of our species." "Then how do we get inside?" Dr. Oxton asked. Jake took a deep breath before answering. He knew his suggestion would sound crazy, but it was the only logical conclusion he could reach. "Maybe you need to send someone the ship will accept," he said. "Someone who might be genetically compatible with the builders." "And who would that be?" Dr. Zethkara asked. Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. "Maybe you need to send a human." The meeting room fell completely silent after Jake spoke. Captain Vextari stared at him with all four eyes, while the other crew members exchanged uncertain glances. The idea of sending a human to board the ancient ship seemed impossible to them. Absolutely not, Dr. Zefkara said, breaking the silence. Humans are far too primitive to handle technology this advanced. You would probably damage something important. Or get yourself killed, Commander Raxthal added. We cannot risk losing our only human specimens. Jake felt his face grow hot with anger. Specimens? Is that what you think we are? You know what? I mean, Commander Raxthal said quickly. You are valuable to our research. We cannot put you in unnecessary danger. But Captain Vextari was studying Jake with a thoughtful expression. Dr. Morrison, why do you think the ship would accept? Humans specifically? Jake had been thinking about this question for hours. The mathematical patterns it showed us were universal concepts that any intelligent species should understand. But the ship only displays them when it rejects our boarding attempts. It is like it is trying to explain why it cannot let us in. That makes no sense, Dr. Zefkara said. Think about it, Jake continued. The ship is millions of years old. Its builders had technology far beyond anything we have now. They might have been the ancestors of one of our current species. Dr. Lisa Park spoke up from her corner of the room. Jake might be right. On Earth, we have legends about ancient visitors from the stars. What if those stories were based on real events? Human mythology is not scientific evidence, Dr. Zefkara said dismissively, but Dr. Myra Oxton was looking at her sensor readings with new interest. Actually, there is something odd about the ship's construction. The proportions are similar to humanoid species, but not exactly like any of our known races. What do you mean? Captain Vextari asked. The doorways, the corridor heights, even the control interfaces we glimpsed during the boarding attempts. They all seem designed for bipedal creatures about 6 feet tall with 5-digit hands. That matches human anatomy better than any other species on this ship. Jake felt a surge of hope. Maybe the crew was finally taking his theory seriously. Even if that is true, Commander Raxthal said, sending Dr. Morrison alone would be suicide. We have no idea what is inside that ship. I would not be alone, Jake said. You could monitor me from here. I could wear a camera and communication equipment. If something goes wrong, you could try to extract me, the same way we extracted the other boarding parties? Dr. Zefkara asked sarcastically. Captain Vextari held up one of her 4 hands for silence. Dr. Morrison, are you volunteering for this mission? Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces watching him. He thought about the years of condescension and dismissal he had endured from these crew members. This was his chance to prove that humans were more than primitive curiosities. Yes, he said, I am volunteering. Jake, no, Lisa said urgently. It is too dangerous. Someone has to try, Jake replied. And I am the only one the ship might accept. Captain Vextari was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, she spoke. We will attempt it. But with full safety protocols, Dr. Morrison will wear the best environmental suit we have. He will carry emergency supplies and multiple communication devices. At the first sign of danger, we abort the mission. This is madness, Dr. Zefkara protested. This is our only option, Captain Vextari replied firmly. Prepare the shuttle. It took 4 hours to get everything ready. Jake put on the environmental suit, which was designed for Valdari physiology and felt awkward on his human frame. Lisa helped him adjust the settings and test all the communication equipment. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly while they worked. No, Jake admitted, but I have to try. This could be the most important discovery in human history. Or it could be the last thing you ever do. Jake sealed his helmet and ran through the final equipment checks. The suit felt heavy and restrictive, but all the systems were working properly. He carried enough air for 6 hours and emergency supplies for twice that long. The shuttle ride to the ancient ship was the longest few minutes of Jake's life. He sat alone in the passenger compartment while Dr. Alex Turner piloted from the front. Through the small window, he could see the massive vessel growing larger as they approached. Approaching the main docking port, Dr. Turner announced over the radio. All systems normal so far. Jake watched the ancient ship carefully. As they got closer, he could see more details of its construction. The hull was not just metal. It looked like it was made from some kind of living material that had been shaped and hardened. Strange symbols covered every surface, flowing together, like writing in a language he had never seen before. 50 meters in closing, Dr. Turner reported. Still no response from the target vessel? Then it happened. The ship began to glow, just as it had during the previous attempts. But this time, the light was different. Instead of the harsh, pulsing energy from before, it was warm and golden. The symbols on the hull began to shine with the same gentle radiance. "The docking port is opening," Dr. Turner said with amazement in his voice. "Dr. Morrison, I think. It is welcoming you." Jake stared in wonder as the massive doors of the docking bay slid apart. Inside, he could see a vast hangar filled with strange but beautiful machinery. Lights began to activate throughout the space, creating a pathway that led deeper into the ship. "Docking successful," Dr. Turner announced. "Dr. Morrison, you are cleared aboard." Jake stood up on shaking legs. This was it. He was about to become the first person in millions of years to set foot inside this ancient vessel. The airlock cycled, and Jake stepped into the ship's docking bay. The artificial gravity was perfect for his human physiology. The air, according to his suit's sensors, was actually breathable. Though he kept his helmet sealed as a precaution, the hangar was enormous. His footsteps echoed in the vast space as he walked toward the glowing pathway. Strange vehicles lined the walls, sleek and organic in design. They looked like they had been grown rather than built. "Jake, can you hear us?" Lisa's voice came through his helmet radio. "I can hear you," he replied. "The ship is incredible. The technology here is beyond anything I have ever seen, but it feels familiar somehow." As he walked deeper into the ship, more lights activated ahead of him. It was as if the vessel was guiding him toward a specific destination. The corridors were exactly the right size for a human to walk comfortably. The controls he passed were positioned at the perfect height for someone of his stature. "The architecture is definitely designed for humanoid species," he reported. "Everything fits human proportions perfectly." He passed through several sections of the ship. Each area seemed to have a different purpose. He saw what looked like living quarters, workshops, and storage areas. All of them were sized for beings very much like humans. Finally, the pathway led him to a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. Jake stopped in the doorway and stared in amazement. The room was dominated by a huge crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. As he approached the crystal, it began to glow brighter. Information displays activated around the room, showing symbols and images that moved too quickly for him to follow. Then suddenly everything stopped. A voice spoke in his mind. It was not coming through his radio or his helmet speakers. It was speaking directly to his thoughts in perfect English. "Welcome home, child of the progenitors." Jake nearly fell over with shock. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am the Harbinger, guardian of this vessel and keeper of the ancient knowledge. I have been waiting for your people to return for so very long." "My people?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Yes, you are human. You are the inheritors of this ship and all that it contains. Your species carries the genetic markers of those who built me." The crystal pulsed, and suddenly Jake's mind was flooded with images. He saw a great civilization, spanning multiple galaxies. He saw ships like this one carrying people who looked remarkably human across the vast distances between stars. He saw the builders of this vessel, and they looked like they could have been his own ancestors. "We are the progenitors," the voice continued. "We are your ancestors. Millions of years ago, we spread across the universe, seeding worlds with life and knowledge. Earth was one of our destinations." Jake staggered as more information poured into his mind. He saw the decline of the progenitor civilization, the decision to preserve their knowledge in ships like this one, and the long wait for their descendants to develop enough to reclaim their heritage. "The others on your ship," the Harbinger said. They are also our children, but they have forgotten their origins. Only humans retained enough of the original genetic pattern to activate our technology. That is why the ship rejected them, Jake realized. Yes, this vessel and its contents can only be awakened by those who carry the direct bloodline of the progenitors. You, Jake Morrison, are one of the last keys to an ancient treasure that spans the galaxy. Jake looked around the chamber with new eyes. This was not just an archaeological discovery. This was humanity's birthright, an inheritance from ancestors they had never known existed. What am I supposed to do with this knowledge? He asked. Jake's mind reeled as the Harbinger filled his thoughts with countless images and memories. He saw entire star systems being born under the guidance of the progenitors. He watched as they carefully planted life on thousands of worlds, nurturing civilizations that would grow into the species he knew today. Stop, he gasped, holding his head as the information flow became overwhelming. It is too much. The Harbinger's voice grew gentler in his mind. Forgive me, Jake Morrison. I have been alone for so long that I forgot how limited organic minds can be. Let me show you more slowly. The flood of images slowed to a manageable stream. Jake saw the progenitors as they really were. They looked human, but taller and more graceful. Their eyes held wisdom that came from millions of years of existence. They had built a civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. We were explorers, the Harbinger explained. We traveled farther than any species before or since. But exploration was not enough. We wanted to ensure that life would continue even after we were gone. Jake saw massive ships like the one he stood in now, carrying progenitor settlers to distant worlds. But these were not conquest missions. The progenitors were gardeners of life itself, carefully choosing which worlds could support which types of creatures. Earth was special, the Harbinger continued. We found it when your solar system was young. We guided its development, helped life evolve in the right directions. Then we left a small population of our own people to watch over it. Those people became humans? Jake asked. Yes, over millions of years they adapted to Earth's environment. They forgot their origins and became a new species. But they kept the genetic patterns that would allow them to use our technology. Jake felt dizzy with the implications. Everything humans thought they knew about their own history was wrong. They were not a young species that had just learned to travel between stars. They were the descendants of the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. Jake, are you all right? Lisa's voice came through his helmet radio. Your vital signs are fluctuating. He had almost forgotten about the crew watching him from the Starbound. I am fine, he said, though he was not sure that was true. The ship's computer is sharing its historical data with me. What kind of data? Captain Vextharius' voice asked. Jake looked around the crystal chamber, wondering how much he should tell them. The Harbinger seemed to sense his uncertainty. You may share what you learn, the AI said. But be careful. This knowledge will change how every species in the galaxy sees itself. The ship was built by an ancient civilization called the progenitors, Jake reported. They existed millions of years before any of our current species developed space travel. What happened to them? Dr. Zethkara asked over the radio. The Harbinger showed Jake more images. He saw the progenitor civilization at its height, with millions of worlds under their protection. But then something went wrong. The images became darker, filled with dying stars and collapsing worlds. They faced a crisis that threatened all life in their home galaxy, Jake said. They'd built ships like this one to preserve their knowledge and carry their people to safety in other galaxies. So this ship is an Ark? Dr. Myra Oxton asked. Yes, but more than that. It is a library of everything the progenitors learned during their existence. And it is also a weapon powerful enough to destroy entire star systems if necessary. Silence fell over the radio channel. Jake could imagine the shock on the alien crew members' faces as they realized what they had discovered. Jake, Captain. Vexthari said carefully, ask the ship's computer if there are other vessels like this one. The Harbinger answered before Jake could speak. There are 47 other ARC ships scattered throughout this galaxy. Most are still dormant, waiting for the progenitor descendants to find them. Jake relayed this information to the crew. Again, silence followed. 47 ships like this one? Commander Raxthul finally asked. Yes, Jake confirmed. Each one contains the same knowledge and the same weapons. The Harbinger began showing Jake more specific information about the ship's capabilities. He saw weapons that could crack planets in half and shields that could stop the energy of an entire star. He saw faster-than-light drives that made current galactic technology look like stone tools, but he also saw medical technology that could cure any disease, manufacturing systems that could build anything from pure energy and terraforming equipment that could turn dead worlds into gardens of life. The progenitors built these ships to help their descendants rebuild civilization, the Harbinger explained. But only those who carry the genetic markers can access the technology. Which species carry these markers? Jake asked. Only humans. The other species in your galaxy are our children too, but they have evolved too far from the original pattern. They can benefit from progenitor technology, but they cannot control it. Jake felt the weight of this revelation settle on his shoulders. Humanity had just discovered that they were the inheritors of the most powerful technology in the galaxy. But that inheritance came with enormous responsibility. What am I supposed to do with this knowledge? He asked the Harbinger. That choice is yours to make. The progenitors believe that their descendants would be wise enough to use this power properly. But we have been wrong before. Jake heard worried voices over the radio as the crew of the Starbound discussed what they had learned. He could imagine the arguments that were already starting. Some would want to claim the ship for their own governments. Others would want to destroy it to prevent anyone from having such power. Jake, Dr. Zethkar's voice came through clearly over the others. You need to download everything you can from that computer. This knowledge belongs to all galactic civilization, not just humans. I disagree, Commander Raxthul said. Technology this powerful should be controlled by the Galactic Council. No single species should have access to weapons that can destroy planets. The Council is controlled by the Valdari and Catherians. Dr. Oxton pointed out. They would use this technology to strengthen their own positions. Jake listened to the argument with growing concern. Already, the discovery was creating conflict among the crew. What would happen when the rest of the galaxy learned about the ARC ships? Harbinger, he said quietly, what happens if I refuse this inheritance? What if I decide humanity is not ready for this responsibility? Then the ships will remain dormant until someone else finds them. But consider this, Jake Morrison, your species has already proven they can travel between stars without destroying themselves. That is more than most of the progenitor children have achieved. The argument over the radio was getting louder. Jake could hear Captain Vexthari trying to maintain order, but the implications of the discovery were too large for the crew to handle calmly. Then another voice joined the conversation. It was Dr. Lisa Park, and she sounded frightened. Jake, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching our position. It looks like a Galactic Council fleet, Jake's heart sank. Someone must have detected the energy signatures from the awakening ship and reported them. To the authorities? The Council fleet would arrive within hours, and they would demand control of the ancient vessel. How many ships? Captain Vexthari asked. At least 12, Lisa replied, including 3 heavy cruisers. They are broadcasting demands for us to surrender the artifact for proper study. The Harbinger's voice grew urgent in Jake's mind. Jake. Morrison, you must decide quickly. If the Council takes control of this ship, they will try to reverse engineer our technology. They will fail, but they might destroy the ship in the process. What are my options? Jake asked. You can activate the ship's full systems and take control. Or you can program it to share certain technologies while keeping the dangerous ones locked away. Or you can order it to self-destruct to prevent misuse. Jake looked around the crystal chamber, feeling the weight of the decision he had to make. The choices he made in the next few hours would determine the future of humanity and every other species in the galaxy. Over the radio, He could hear the crew of the Starbound preparing for the arrival of the Council fleet. Some wanted to flee, with whatever information they could gather. Others wanted to stay and try to negotiate with the Council authorities. "Jake," Captain Vextari said, "whatever you are going to do, you need to do it quickly. The Council fleet will be here soon, and they will not be interested in discussions." Jake closed his eyes and tried to think clearly. He was an archaeologist, not a politician or a military leader. How was he supposed to make a decision that would affect the entire galaxy? "Harbinger," he said finally, "show me exactly what technologies this ship contains. I need to understand what I am choosing between." The AI began displaying detailed information about every system on the ship. Jake saw weapons of unimaginable power, but also tools that could heal entire worlds. He saw technology that could be used for conquest, but also knowledge that could bring peace and prosperity to every species in the galaxy. As he studied the information, Jake began to form a plan. It was risky and would require perfect timing, but it might be the only way to prevent a galactic war over the progenitor inheritance. "Lisa," he said over the radio, "how long until the Council fleet arrives?" 3 hours, maybe less." Jake nodded to himself. It would have to be enough time. Jake stood in the crystal chamber, feeling the weight of the entire galaxy on his shoulders. Through his helmet radio, he could hear the crew of the Starbound preparing for the arrival of the Council fleet. Time was running out, and he had to make the most important decision in human history. "Harbinger," he said quietly, "can you show me the exact location of all 47 ARC ships?" The AI projected a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy in front of Jake. 47 points of light marked the positions of the sleeping vessels. Some were hidden in asteroid fields, others drifted in the empty space between stars. All of them were waiting for humans to wake them up. "If I activate this ship's systems, will it alert the others?" Jake asked. "Yes, all ARC ships are connected. Through quantum communication arrays, they will know when one of their sisters awakens." Jake nodded. That was what he had hoped to hear. His plan was dangerous, but it might be the only way to prevent a galactic war. "Listen carefully, everyone," he said over the radio. "The Council fleet wants to take this ship and study its technology, but they cannot activate it without a human. That gives us some leverage." "What kind of leverage?" Captain Vextari asked. "I am going to make them an offer they cannot refuse," Jake replied. "But first I need to do something that might seem crazy." "Jake, what are you planning?" Lisa's voice was filled with worry. "I am going to wake up all 47 ships at once." Silence filled the radio channel. Jake could imagine the shocked expressions on the alien faces watching him from the Starbound. "That is insane," Dr. Zethkara finally said. "You have no idea what those ships might do." "Actually, I do," Jake replied. "The Harbinger has shown me their programming. They are designed to respond to commands from progenitor descendants. They will obey humans, but only humans." "And you think that will stop the Council from trying to take them?" Commander Raxthul asked. "I think it will. Force them to negotiate instead of simply taking what they want," Jake said. "When they realize that 47 planet-killing weapons just activated across the galaxy, and that only humans can control them, they will have to listen to what we have to say." Jake turned to the crystal. "Harbinger, if I give the activation." "Command, can you ensure that the other ships do not attack anyone unless directly threatened?" "Yes, the ARC ships are programmed for defensive operations only, unless specifically ordered otherwise by a qualified descendant." "Good, send the activation signal." The crystal pulsed with brilliant light. Jake felt the command travel through quantum space to every corner of the galaxy. One by one, the 47 ARC ships began to wake up from their million-year sleep. "Jake, what have you done?" Captain Vextharius' voice was tight with fear. "I have given humanity a seat at the galactic table," Jake replied. "Now we wait for the Council fleet to arrive." 2 hours later, the Council ships dropped out of faster than light. Travel near the ancient vessel. Jake watched through the ship's sensors as 12 warships took positions around the Starbound and the ARC ship. They were impressive vessels, but they looked like toys compared to the massive progenitor technology. "This is Admiral Kethvarov." "The Galactic Council," a stern voice announced over the communication channel. "By order of the Council, you will surrender the alien artifact for proper study and classification." Captain Vextari responded carefully. "Admiral, the situation is more complicated than your reports indicated. We have discovered that this vessel requires specific genetic markers to operate. It cannot be studied using conventional methods." That is irrelevant," Admiral Kethvar replied. "Council scientists will find a way to access the technology. Prepare to transfer all personnel to our ships immediately." Jake activated his communication link to the Council fleet. "Admiral, this is Dr. Jake Morrison, the human archaeologist aboard the research vessel. I need to speak with you about what we have discovered. Humans are not authorized to communicate directly with Council officials," Admiral Kethvar said coldly. "Return to your ship and prepare for transfer." "Admiral," Jake said firmly, 2 hours ago, 47 ships identical to this one activated across the galaxy. Every one of them is armed with weapons that can destroy planets, and every one of them will only respond to human commands." The communication channel fell silent. Jake could imagine the chaos that must be erupting on the Council ships as they confirmed his statement with their long-range sensors. "You are lying," Admiral Kethvar finally said, but his voice had lost its confident tone. "Check your sensors," Jake replied. "Contact your home worlds. Ask them if they have detected massive energy signatures in their space. I will wait." 20 minutes passed before Admiral Kethvar spoke again. "Dr. Morrison, I have been authorized to negotiate with you. What are your terms?" Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "I want to propose a treaty between humanity and the Galactic Council. Humans will share progenitor medical and environmental technology with all species. In return, the Council will recognize humanity as an equal member with full voting rights." "Impossible," Admiral Kethvar said immediately. "Humans are too primitive to be given such status." "Admiral," Jake said calmly, "right now, humans control 47 ships that could destroy every major world in the galaxy. I think that proves we are not as primitive as you believe." Jake heard urgent conversations in the background of the Admiral's transmission. The Council representatives were clearly struggling with this new reality. "What guarantee do we have that humans will not use these weapons aggressively?" Admiral Kethvar asked. "The same guarantee you have with any other species," Jake replied. "The knowledge that aggression would result in retaliation from everyone else. But humans have something additional to offer." "Which is?" Jake looked at the crystal chamber around him. "We can teach other species to use some progenitor technology. Not the weapons, but the tools for healing and creation. Medical devices that can cure any disease. Machines that can clean polluted worlds. Technology that can turn dead planets into gardens." Over the radio, Jake could hear excited whispers from the crew of the Starbound. Even Dr. Zefkara seemed impressed by the possibilities. "How do we know you can deliver on these promises?" Admiral Kethvar asked. "Because I am going to demonstrate right now," Jake said. He turned to the Harbinger. "Can you transmit basic medical scanner technology to the Council ships?" "Of course," the AI replied. "Transmitting now." Jake watched through the ship's sensors as streams of data flowed to the Council vessels. Within minutes, Admiral Kethvar's voice returned, filled with amazement. "These medical scanners are centuries ahead of our current technology," he said. "They can detect and treat conditions we cannot even diagnose." "That is just the beginning," Jake said. "The progenitors left behind the knowledge to solve every major problem facing galactic civilization. Hunger, disease, environmental destruction, energy shortages. All of it can be fixed with the right technology. But only if humans control it?" Admiral Kethvar asked suspiciously. "Only if humans choose to share it," Jake corrected. "The technology cannot be forced or stolen. It must be given freely." Admiral Kethvar was quiet for several minutes. Jake could imagine the political calculations happening among the Council representatives. They had come here expecting to claim a single alien artifact. Instead, they had discovered that the balance of power in the galaxy had completely shifted. "Dr. Morrison," Admiral Keffer finally said, "I am authorized to begin preliminary treaty negotiations. But this agreement will need to be ratified by the full council." "I understand," Jake replied. "But there is one more thing you should know. Earth will need to be involved in these negotiations. You will be dealing with humanity as a whole, not just me. Very well. We will send diplomatic envoys to your homeworld." Jake felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. He had prevented a war, but he had also committed his entire species to a path they did not even know existed yet. "Jake," Lisa's voice came through his helmet radio, "you realize you just changed everything, right? Humanity is going to go from being ignored to being the most important species in the galaxy overnight." "I know," Jake replied. "I just hope we are ready for it." The Harbinger's voice spoke in his mind. "You have chosen wisely, Jake Morrison. The progenitors would be proud of their descendants." Jake looked around the crystal chamber one last time. In a few hours, he would leave this ship and return to the Starbound. Teams of human scientists would come to study the progenitor technology and learn how to use it responsibly. But for now, he stood alone in the heart of an ancient vessel, holding the future of galactic civilization in his hands. It was not the career he had planned when he joined the archaeological expedition, but it was the destiny that had been waiting for him among the stars. "Harbinger," he said, "transmit the coordinates of Earth to the Council fleet. It is time for humanity to take its place in the galaxy." The ancient AI complied, and Jake Morrison, Xenorchaeologist turned galactic diplomat, prepared to return home and help his species claim their inheritance from the stars. The age of humanity was about to begin, not through conquest or conflict, but through the wisdom to share the gifts of their ancient ancestors with all the children of the galaxy. As he walked back through the corridors of the Ark ship, Jake could not help but smile.